From the people that brought you expensive versus cheap, spy versus spy, comes cheap versus cheaper. Anyways, we're going to compare these two Squiers. Stick around. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name is Chris McKee.
And I'm Cooper Greenberg.
We're here with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and like our videos. If you'd like to support the channel, click the link below to become an insider. So today, we are continuing our series that people have really liked of cheap versus expensive, but we wanted to do it a little bit different and look at actually two fairly affordable electric guitars, both from Squier. And typically, when you say Squier, people think
pretty inexpensive.
Pretty inexpensive, affordable, good value, or cheap, depending upon what they're thinking. But I'm excited about this particular comparison. So Cooper, tell us what we are comparing first of all.
Yeah, so for kind of our wide range within the Squier line, we have an Affinity Stratocaster and a Classic Vibe Stratocaster that Chris is holding. And this is the 70's HSS. You can tell it's the 70's because it's got a cool
big old headstock.
Yeah. And this got a big old headstock as well.
It does.
Yeah. So I believe this one comes in around $229, and then this one is right around $400. So it's it's a little bit of a jump. There's a lot that Squier offers kind of between there, all over the place. But we really like the Classic Vibe series because there's just really cool stuff all over it.
Yeah, this as well as the Contemporary series kind of represents the top end of Squier's lineup. If you go pretty much above that price point, then you start getting into the Mexi stuff, the Player series, which has actually, I think, turned into a bigger jump than it used to be, but nevertheless. And these are crafted in Indonesia, typically. I actually have a Fender, not Squier branded guitar that's also crafted there. And it was really, I think, a lot like these guitars. It may even be the same factory, I don't know, but the quality's fantastic. So they're good quality guitars. My eldest son has a Classic Vibe 50's Strat that he's had for a number of years. And I've said on the channel before, I'll grab that guitar and play it. It feels great. It sounds great. Really, they're good guitars. And I think the funniest example of that was years ago, Rob Chapman was on Anderton's doing one of those like blindfold things that you keep trying to get me to do. And this is why I don't want to do one.
You got to do it.
Because he was comparing Telecasters and mistook a Classic Vibe 50's Tele for a custom shop Fender Telecaster.
That's high praise.
That's high praise.
Yeah. I mean, they're cool. All of the Classic Vibe stuff. They do 50s, 60s, 70s, correct? When are they going to do some 80s Classic Vibe?
I'm sure it's coming down the pike as we all get older.
Yeah, that's retro.
I'm going to feel really old when they do a 90s reissue.
When they do a Classic Vibe Highway 1 from 2010.
Yeah, high praise.
That's high praise. So we chose these to compare just because they're two Strats with big old headstocks, and they're also HSS. Yeah,
and they're within the same lineup. So, someone could say, well, cheap, expensive would be comparing this to a Fender. But these are the same brand, and why I like this is probably, arguably, and we were talking about this, the biggest jump that you see in quality happens here. The biggest jump that you see in features happens kind of here, right between that there are cheaper guitars than this, like the Bullets are cheaper, but this very entry level to kind of the next step up is where things start to move a lot, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's weird because a lot of it comes down to the intangibles, the feel stuff too, which we can talk about between these two. And so it's hard to really see visually in the video, but we can talk about like some of those feel things that we were talking about before we started this on the frets, the necks, the finishes, and then the sound, pickups there's sound differences for sure.
Everything tends to improve. I'll tell you the things visually and by feel that I normally pick up on from a really inexpensive electric guitar to something that's moving more up into kind of this price range. And that is the feel of and look of the plastics. So like the pick guards, and this is no different, right? This is a multi-ply pick guard that would be at home on any Fender Stratocaster. That's a single ply, and it's fine, but it just doesn't quite have the same look to it.
Yeah.
The rest of the plastics tend to be the same, although sometimes on guitars, I'll look at the knobs, and they feel and look a little cheesy.
Yeah.
As far as the plastic, the pots, you can usually feel something. The pickups will look fine often, but you can definitely hear a difference. I tend to find that lower priced pickups sound muddier. They have less definition. They're kind of compressed so that there's not a lot of bass, there's not a lot of treble. It's mid range, and it's all just not a lot of nice harmonics. And then the necks and fretwork tend to be the biggest giveaway.
Biggest giveaway for sure, and how they feel kind of when you're bending a string over the frets, and you can really feel how they rub, and there's a lot of friction. I think it's interesting that I'm thinking about this right now. It's like for super entry level stuff, it's a satin finish, and then jumping up between the classic vibe all the way through Vintera lines, and there's a lot of gloss.
There is. I think, if it's a Vintera for something like this, I think it's kind of trying to be
old school,
accurate to the time frame. But like the Player series aren't, and they tend to be satin finish.
Yeah, it's just it's an interesting thing because then you get to the really high end, and it's like the best, most amazing satin finish ever. This is not bad. The Affinity has a satin.
But you can hear it.
Neck.
I can hear your neck from over here, or I can hear your hand hitting the neck.
Yeah,
or your hand hitting your neck, or whatever.
That's my neck. Whatever. Neck's all over the place. But the thing that I want to remember where I saw this, but I'm pretty sure that the Squier Affinity is like one of the top selling guitars in the world.
Oh yeah.
And just for good reason.
Might just be from the packs.
Yeah,
the packs alone.
Yeah. They are good value for the price. The classic vibe just kind of takes that next step a little bit though. It's like really cool finishes, good sound. I dig them. The tellies especially, you can get custom tellies or thin line tellies for a pretty great price. Yeah,
the designs, the colors, the fit and finish of them all tend to be improved. There's nothing to complain about on that guitar, but once you grab something that's a little bit more expensive, if you're paying attention, you'll notice it. And one of the things on this, in addition to the looks like the tinted neck that you have on this, the neck shape is substantially different. On that, it feels small. The nut feels very narrow. I wonder if that's because it's intended for someone who's just starting out. I don't know the actual dimensions of this nut, but it feels wider, and that could also be a consequence of the neck. The neck is chunkier. It's like this chunky 70s kind of D-shaped neck to it, which feels great, and I would actually probably prefer over something that's too narrow and kind of thin. But yeah, I mean, even the finish on this, this kind of walnut finish that's on this, and the choices of finish that you get, everything goes up. But I think if it's one thing to narrow down, it comes down to that feel. It's the feel and the setup is so much more dramatically improved in this small, arguably small jump in price.
Yeah.
And we say that it literally is like twice as much more. But
relatively,
but dollar-wise, it's not a big difference.
Yeah, it's a difference that, like, you don't see a player to an American professional. It's not. I mean, it's so much bigger of a jump between these. You haven't even heard the demos yet. If you can, just take the step into the classic vibe. I think they're really, really good value for what they are. The cool thing about the Affinity, and I don't know if this is relatively new or not. Have they really expanded the finishes available on these?
Well, and I don't remember when they started offering the HSS version, but that wasn't always a thing.
Every time I go pull one up from the warehouse, it's like, oh, this is an ocean turquoise metallic and really cool colors. So I think they are catering.
I want to say that was in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I remember, it may have even been sooner than that. I remember being on a Zoom call, and so that probably dates it, of seeing all of these colors coming out.
Yeah, it's just cool. I mean, both of these cater to people that want a unique instrument and can't go for, mod shop, great, it's cool to have other finishes, even just sparkle pick guards and stuff is pretty cool.
It's cool. To your point about the USA though, here's my argument. I think that there's probably a bigger difference between these two guitars than there is between this and an American Pro 2. Because there's a substantial difference in the American Pro 2 in feel and the pickups and all of that.
Yeah.
But it's more refined. The recipes here, they're all Strats, right? Mm-hmm. This is kind of like when you see someone that knows how to follow a recipe and then you eat the cooking of someone who knows how to cook. That's kind of what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
It's someone who can put together this, it's a basic formula, and then as you move up, it gets better and better. But this is that next big jump. This is the person who has followed their recipe, but taken cooking classes, graduated, is working at a restaurant. Boom, you get to an ultra, guitar, and that's Gordon Ramsay or something.
Yeah, that's the Michelin star kind of stuff.
Right, but the difference between really good and the very best is less than like the starting point and really good.
Yeah.
Like going from the starting point to really good is a substantial leap in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And then you're just refining things.
Yeah,
That's kind of my point.
So I'm playing both of these, and it's just clean tones. It's not through this amp. We're going through a Hot Rod Deluxe, which you'll see in the demos. Just, EQs up to noon, a little reverb, just so you can hear the true sound of the pickups. But I want to know if you can hear it, if the feel and how the ease of play comes across in the demos. So check it out. Affinity Strat, classic vibe Strat.
So there you have it. Now, one of the things you said about the demos, and this has always been my philosophy on the channel, is I try not to like record the same thing over and over until I get it perfect, because I think how I'm playing is as informative of how well the guitar is made as what you hear through the speakers. So if something's coming across as maybe not as smooth, I think that kind of speaks to the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So these two, I think sound-wise they are kind of similar. They're not a crazy difference in pickups, One thing that stood out to me playing them is that they are HSS, which I kind of just forgot until when I worked from the 5 position down to the 1 and hit that humbucker. It's some rock and roll volume there. But they're both nice. There are things that I like about each one. And a point that I want to see if you agree with is with Squier stuff, it can vary based on just 2 different serial numbers, like pulling one out of the box.
Yeah, I think that, there's less, the higher up in value of guitars that you look at, generally speaking, okay? Let's recognize the elephant in the room. There are some high-end manufacturers that are not that consistent.
Yeah.
For reasons, okay? But generally speaking, the higher-end guitar, the higher-end brand, the more expensive model tends to be more consistent than the lower-end stuff. That being said, I mean, we're saying that in 2021 perspective. Man, I heard horror stories from like George Gruen of guitars back in the 70s that would arrive in the shop brand new and would be unplayable. That had warped necks as soon as you open them up out of the boxes. And we don't have to deal with that so much anymore. And so all guitars are more consistent. And I would say a Fender Pro 2 or Ultra is more consistent from one to the next than these tend to be.
Yeah.
But they're not wildly inconsistent.
There's nothing ever, you never pick one up and you're like, oh my God. The thing that I think it comes down to is some of them you can take out of the box and it's ready to go, and some of them you can take out of the box and you're going to need to get a setup from your luthier.
Yeah.
So I just chose these 2 this morning out of our warehouse. We have a massive selection of Squiers in the warehouse, so if you're interested, we have plenty. But just these 2 being random HSS Strats that I pulled out, I think that one, the action is very low. And so that sort of informed the playing, and maybe a little too low for my taste. This one, I think the action is really nice, and I think it's set up a little bit better. However, the frets kind of threw me off because there was some kind of friction and
I actually wondered if it was the strings, but I felt it kind of all over the place, a little scratchy.
So it's interesting, but the thing that I think both of these would be good for is if you want to learn how to set up a guitar, especially, you can practice on these, and they're robust instruments. You're not going to jack anything up, but also you're not doing it on your custom
we
shop.
both know people that gig with Squiers.
Yeah.
They'll swap out the pickups, do a setup, and Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is you can customize these.
And they do it because they have precious guitars they don't want to gig with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just they're a nice canvas on which you can create your own custom Stratocaster and learn how to do your own setups on. But I think the interesting thing is like that, think about it when you open up a new guitar out of the box. If you don't like the action, you can get that adjusted. You can change certain things to make it more to your liking. But that being said, I do like the classic vibe more.
I do like the classic vibe more. I like the look. I like the setup on it. I like the neck feel. Like I said, I've never been shy to grab my sons and go, wow, this feels really great.
Yeah.
Here, it's doing what we do on this channel. You play a ton of different guitars, and I can just run my finger on the back of this neck and go, there's areas that needed more sandpaper, right? There's spots. And you pick up on those things the more and more you play stuff. But nevertheless, they're both great guitars. They're both affordable guitars. And I think, the big jumps that can happen in a small little space is what's really cool and exciting to explore. So
yeah, I'd like to explore that kind of relationship through other manufacturers.
Man, those Paranormals we played. I still want one of those.
Those are underrated.
Those are really cool guitars.
Yeah, very cool. They Supersonic. I love that one. It is the most hideous guitar that I've ever seen.
Was
in my
it
life.
The Toronado?
Tornado's cool. Yeah. Is that the humbuckers on that one? They're cool.
Cool body shape. Fender should use that body shape in more stuff.
Yeah.
So. But to your point, we'll do this. I'd like to do this on other manufacturers, looking at their most value-oriented guitars and looking at what happens from kind of the very beginning to the top end of that spectrum. If that's something that you would like to see, let us know in the comments below, and also what your experience has been, even with this brand and others that are like it, going from like that very entry-level model to something that's a little bit more precious price-wise. So Let us know in the comments below. If you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and like our videos. At the end of the day, the very best guitar in the world
is a Squier.
It says Squier on the headstock,
Yeah.
Anyways, keep coming back for more. If you want to support the channel, make sure you become an insider, and we'll see you next time.